Britain's dying cities. A mass exodus nobody is talking about. The places people are abandoning tell a story most do not want to hear. Some of these places have the cheapest housing in England, and still people are leaving. Cheap does not matter when jobs, safety, and public services are collapsing. This is not random movement, it is a pattern. And it begins in places you might expect and ends somewhere you would not. In 10th place, Portsmouth stands as a city shaped by the tides. Naval apprentices on the docks, families tracing generations of shipbuilding, and a skyline still dominated by the Royal Navy. Yet more than 18,000 people left Portsmouth in the year to mid-2024, with a net migration loss of 5,500. For all its history and relative affordability, this is a city where stability is not translating into confidence. The Royal Navy remains the anchor employer, but civilian opportunities have stalled and the promise of a steady job no longer guarantees a future. The average mortgage now sits at £1,000 at £125 a month, a figure that presses hard against local wages. For many young workers and graduates, the numbers simply do not add up. The city manages to keep house prices below the national average, but the wage-to-mortgage ratio leaves little room for hope. Council services have tightened and everyday amenities feel stretched thin. Even in a place where property is within reach, the draw of better prospects elsewhere is proving stronger. Portsmouth reveals a pattern repeating across Britain when jobs and services fail to keep pace with need. Affordability alone cannot stem the tide of departures. Number 9. Sunderland stands as a city where the promise of cheap housing collides with the reality of limited opportunity. Rows of terraced houses stretch across the Wear. Their price is among the lowest in England, £210,000 for a median home. On paper, that should be a lifeline. Yet for many, the numbers do not work. Weekly earnings average just £610, leaving little room for ambition or security. The city's fortunes have long been tied to a single giant, the Nissan plant, once a symbol of renewal, now a source of anxiety. The specter of closure or downsizing hangs over thousands of families, exposing the risk that comes with relying on one employer for economic survival. Graduates trained at the local university rarely linger, just 55% stay after their studies, with the rest heading for Newcastle or Leeds in search of higher wages and broader prospects. Sunderland's outflow, nearly 3,000 residents last year, may not be the country's largest, but it is steady and structural. The city's cheap homes cannot compensate for a job market that feels brittle or for the sense that the future lies elsewhere. Sunderland reveals a national dilemma. When opportunity narrows to a single thread, even the most affordable city can become a place people leave behind. 8th place, Blackpool wears its contradictions in plain sight. On the surface, the bright lights of the promenade and the echo of summer crowds suggest a city thriving on tourism. But when the season ends, the reality for residents is far starker. Blackpool's crime rate, officially recorded at 85 offenses per 1,000 people, is among the highest in the country, with some neighborhoods experiencing rates that climb even higher, well into the 154 to 161 per 1,000, bands cited by recent analyses. Behind the guesthouse facades, a dense patchwork of houses in multiple occupation, MOs, has emerged, now making up 11% of the town's private rentals. These properties, often the only option for the most vulnerable, have become magnets for deprivation and instability. The city's dependence on tourism is a double-edged sword. In the summer, jobs multiply, but when the lights dim in autumn, work vanishes almost overnight. Winter brings a surge in unemployment and hardship, with whole streets falling quiet as seasonal workers leave or struggle to get by. For many, the promise of affordable living is undone by the daily threat of crime, the grind of poverty, and the knowledge that prosperity here is fleeting. Blackpool exposes a national fault line even where the cost of living is low and visitors pour in. the fabric of daily life can unravel when an entire economy rests on a single, fragile season. Number 7, Stoke-on-Trent, stands as a city where legacy and loss are inseparable. The skyline still bristles with the red brick outlines of pottery works, a reminder of the era when the potteries carried British ceramics to the world. Today, that heritage feels more like a memory than a living industry. The 2025 PwC Good Growth for Cities Index places Stoke-on-Trent among the bottom 10 urban areas nationwide, a stark signal that the city's economic transition has stalled. Iconic names, Royal Dalton, Wedgwood, Spodey, have shuttered factories or shifted production abroad, leaving behind empty kills and a shrinking jobs base. For young people, the message is clear. Each year hundreds depart for Manchester or Birmingham, drawn by universities and the promise of broader horizons. The city's net migration has turned negative with an outflow of 3,800 residents in the last year alone, despite a median house price of £215,000. Well below the national average, affordability offers little comfort when the local job market cannot keep pace. Weekly earnings hover at £610 and unemployment remains stubbornly above 6%. The story here is not one of sudden collapse but of a slow ebb, an erosion of opportunity that pushes each new generation to look elsewhere. Stoke-on-Trent reveals the limits of nostalgia. When a city's industrial backbone is lost and nothing rises to replace it, even deep roots cannot keep people from leaving. Bradford stands as a city crowned with cultural ambition yet shadowed by realities that refuse to shift. The City of Culture 2025 banners hang above streets where deprivation remains deeply entrenched. 38% of local neighborhoods rank among England's most deprived. Official optimism, backed by millions in arts funding and regeneration grants, was meant to signal a turning point. But the numbers tell a different story. More than 3,100 residents left Bradford last year, a steady outflow that cultural prestige alone has failed to reverse. Crime remains a daily concern. Numbio's 2026 index rates Bradford at 68.1, among the highest in the country, and public surveys reveal persistent anxiety about safety after dark. For many, the promise of transformation feels distant from daily experience. Theaters reopen, murals brighten the city center, yet the grind of low wages, with weekly earnings averaging just £605, and the weight of deprivation continue to drive families and graduates to seek better elsewhere. Bradford's paradox is stark. A city celebrated on the national stage, but unable to translate investment and recognition into confidence or stability for its own people. The migration map shows that even bold cultural branding cannot compensate for the fundamentals, jobs, safety, and quality of life. Bradford becomes a warning. Prestige projects may win headlines, but they cannot stem the tide when the underlying structures remain unchanged. Number 5. Leicester is a city that seems to have everything in its favor. The home of a Premier League football club, 2 major universities, and a reputation for innovation and diversity, Leicester projects an image of vibrancy and opportunity. Yet behind the banners and accolades, the numbers reveal a different reality. In the year to mid-2024, more than 31,500 people departed Leicester, while only 22,000 arrived, a net migration loss of 9,305 residents. This is not a trickle but a steady drain, raising uncomfortable questions about the city's appeal to those who know it best. Crime weighs heavily on daily life with about 131 offenses for every 1,000 people, much higher than the national average, making routines that should feel safe require caution. The city's strengths, like its universities and sports achievements, haven't led to more confidence or security for its residents. Even with a strong local identity and a population that's fairly young and skilled, people leaving suggest that deeper worries are still present. Graduates, families, and longtime residents are choosing to leave, not because Leicester lacks potential, but because the promise of opportunity doesn't match the reality of living conditions and public safety. Leicester highlights the contradiction at the heart of Britain's urban exodus. Even cities with significant economic and cultural advantages aren't safe from decline. When headlines and reputation can't overcome daily concerns about crime, services, and the future, the decision to leave becomes less about ambition and more about what's necessary. This isn't an isolated situation but part of a larger national trend where even the best-equipped cities are struggling to keep their residents. At number 4, Nottingham is at a turning point between hope and abandonment. This is a city that really should attract talent. Its universities graduate thousands of skilled students each year, with ambitions shaped within the city's lecture halls and labs. However, when the degrees are awarded, the departure gates start to fill up. Only a small percentage of Nottingham's graduates actually stay, with most heading to London, Manchester, or even abroad, attracted by better job markets and the promise of stability that Nottingham can no longer offer. The numbers are quite striking. Crime has climbed to 151 offenses per 1,000 people, making everyday life feel uncertain in areas that used to be considered safe. But the most shocking event occurred in November 2023, when Nottingham City Council officially declared bankruptcy. The Section 114 notice indicated not just a financial crisis, but a complete loss of public trust. Essential services were drastically cut, trash collection was reduced to a 3-day cycle, social care waiting lists grew dramatically, and 2 local libraries permanently closed their doors. For both families and young professionals, the message was clear. If you want dependable services and a good future for your children, you might need to search elsewhere. Nottingham's problem isn't just about crime or poor council management. It's the combination of economic promise and societal breakdown, where the city's capacity to educate and inspire is weakened by its failure to provide safety and stability. The departure of both graduates and longtime residents serves as a warning. When a city's foundations weaken, even its most promising individuals won't remain to build upon them. Moving on to the top 3, Luton is the commuter town that once promised a lot but now delivers less each year. The city's location ought to be its strongest asset, being just minutes from London by train, hosting a major airport, and once being seen as the perfect balance between city opportunities and suburban peace. But the figures reveal a story of disappointment. Migration has decreased by 39% since 2021, and the net loss of residents now exceeds 7,000 annually. For a city Luton's size, this isn't a gradual decrease, but a rush for the exits. Housing, which was once Luton's primary appeal, now prevents more people from moving in than it welcomes. Average prices have jumped over £280,000, a cost that's uncomfortably high for a town where the promise of a London salary rarely matches the reality of local incomes. Even for those who can afford to purchase a home, there's a hidden downside to the deal. Public surveys consistently rank Luton among the least desirable places to live in Britain. Worries about safety, crumbling infrastructure, and a feeling that investment rarely reaches ordinary neighborhoods have left significant negative impacts on the city's image. The contradiction is quite obvious. Luton's transportation links and airport expansion should have secured its future. Yet, these advantages haven't resulted in increased confidence or stability. The commuter dream has turned into frustration, as the very people who once viewed Luton as a stepping stone to better things are now choosing to depart. Ultimately, geographical advantages mean very little when everyday life is dominated by anxiety and decline. Luton's exodus is a warning sign. When a city can't convert its assets into a better quality of life, even the most ideal location becomes a disadvantage. At number 2, Birmingham serves as a warning that no city is too big to experience failure. In September 2023, the City Council issued a Section 114 notice. This was the first time a major UK city with over 1 million people declared itself unable to meet its legal financial obligations. The cause was a massive equal pay liability of £1 billion, a historic debt that forced the council to stop all but the most critical services. By mid-year, the effects were undeniable. 79,000 people had left Birmingham, representing the largest single-year outflow from any British city in recent history. The scale of the crisis is noticeable in all aspects of daily life. Library hours have been significantly reduced, with main branches shut down and community centers left unused. Youth programs, which were once vital for families across the West Midlands, have been cut by over 15%, leaving thousands of young people without support or safe places to go. Delays in garbage collection have become common, particularly in outer areas as the council struggles to manage even basic services. For residents, the message is unavoidable. The city's ability to provide for its citizens has collapsed under the burden of its own financial responsibilities. The exodus from Birmingham isn't just a reaction to financial figures. It's a collective loss of faith, a response to the visible breakdown of the social agreement between the city and its people. Households earning between £30,000 and £45,000, who form the core of the city's working and middle classes, are among the first to leave, taking with them the skills, stability, and drive that once fueled Birmingham's development. The city's challenging situation isn't just a random misfortune, but an indication that even Britain's largest urban centers are vulnerable to the same systemic problems faced by smaller towns. As Birmingham struggles, the warning for London and the rest of the country becomes harder to ignore. When the foundations crumble, the outflow turns into a flood. And finally, at number 1, London stands as the clearest symbol of a nation in transition. The capital, long considered the central hub of Britain, is now experiencing a double exodus that affects people of all classes, ages, and ambitions. In 2023 alone, 860,000 people left London, an outflow that is larger than the population of most British cities. This isn't a small stream, but a massive flow, and the people leaving tell a story that is both familiar and new. Young professionals, families, and the wealthy are all departing for various reasons, but they are drawn by the same feeling of disappointment. The statistics are undeniable. The average house price has dramatically increased to £701,280, making homeownership impossible for anyone except the very rich. For individuals buying their first home, the decision is clear. 31% of those leaving London are in this group, looking for places where their money goes further and their futures feel less uncertain. The city's reputation as a place to kickstart ambitions has diminished due to unaffordable housing, stagnant incomes, and the constant pressure of daily life. However, it's not just the young or those struggling financially who are leaving. Since the government's changes to the non-DOM tax system in April 2025, over 10,800 millionaires have relocated, bringing with them investment capital and an international prestige that once defined London's appeal. The city's global standing, often measured by wealth and opportunity, is now defined by its losses in those same areas. The rise of remote work has only sped up this shift, and a sense of international prestige that used to make London so appealing. The city's global standing, which was often judged by its riches and possibilities, is now counting its drawbacks using those very same measures. The trend towards working remotely has only made this transition happen faster. Before the pandemic, 29% of people moving out mentioned remote work as a reason. By the year 2026, that number had risen to 37%.